Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Frank Nicolacci, and I'm the sales manager for Adimex, distributor of SNS products for Australia and New Zealand. Welcome and thank you for taking the time to attend this live webinar event brought to you by Adimex and hosted by Studio Network Solutions based in St. Louis, Missouri. Joining me today is Tim Ward, SNS Territory Manager for the APAC region, and your presenter today is Steve McKenna, SNS Sales Manager. Today's event is primarily focusing on shared storage for Adobe Creative Cloud collaborative workflows. However, SNS also has solutions for Avid, SCP, Pro Tools, to name some common applications used in media and entertainment today. We do want this webinar to be interactive. You will notice on your screen is a chat area, so please use this to post questions, and we'll endeavour to answer those questions as we go along. It's my pleasure now to introduce Tim Ward, who will then hand over to Steve. So over to you, Tim.
Thank you very much, Frank, and thank you again for spending time with us today, learning about how SNS can help you with your with your Adobe workflow. I just wanted to mention we've been doing business in Australia for several years, many years, and we've got some recent installations of our EVO workflow defined shared storage in Australia. Beyond was recently put in a 16-bay system, Shark Island as well, and Zigzag Post. And on the invitation you received, there was a link to a case study for Zigzag Post. If you didn't take advantage of that, please do. If you have lost that link, if you want to put a comment in the survey at the end, we'll get you that link. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Steve McKenna, who is a global sales manager with SNS and a demo presenter extraordinaire. With that, Steve, take it away.
Thanks, Tim. Set the bar kind of high. I don't know about extraordinaire, but we'll see how we go here. Guys, thanks everyone for taking the time to listen to me drone on here a little bit. Some exciting stuff we've got to talk about and kind of how we can enhance and make the Adobe software and the native file systems that it runs on better, more collaborative, helping us all kind of get through our day. With that, let's start at the beginning, a little bit about kind of SNS. We are Studio Network Solutions. We've been doing nothing but making shared storage for video and audio post-production now for 17 years. We have 50,000 customers and growing worldwide, and we support our EVO Shared Storage solution in over 50 countries. Some of the many customers that we have been privileged to work with over the years can be seen right here. So anyone from we've got Shark Island, we've got NASA, HBO, Google, but we have solutions that are going to fit any size team, ranging from small post-production, small boutique post-production houses, all the way up to Google, HBO, Microsoft, and the NHL here in the States. But what we're here to talk about today specifically is the Adobe Creative Cloud and the way we can work with it on shared storage to increase our collaborative ability, shorten our turnaround times, and make sure everyone gets home at a reasonable hour versus having to be at the office all night. So to kind of get us started, I want to kind of juxtapose what we're doing today versus kind of what we were doing 5, 10, 8 years ago as file-based workflows became more prominent. So first, we had local storage. This could be an internal hard drive. It could be direct attached storage to a workstation. And this was the only way that we could begin to get the speeds that we needed, whether it be with FireWire or now with Thunderbolt or whatever, to be able to really edit HD video on a computer versus having tape. But this presented a lot of challenges, right? It's hard to share content. We have to have a copy on everybody's direct attached drive or local drive. We have to lose the time to make those copies. And quite frankly, finding which version is active and what's the most current just became an absolute terror as we did that. because we just had so many redundant copies, we didn't know which was active and which wasn't. And then obviously all of these problems exacerbate the more editors we get. Now we don't just buy an edit workstation, we have to buy a new drive for that guy, we have to load it up with all the footage and get it going. So this is not an ideal solution, but this is where many of our customers actually start. You start off with 1 or 2 guys, this is great. You move up to 4, 5, 6, 7, this becomes absolutely untenable. So now we're stepping into the present, right? And kind of what we can do today. And we want to be able to collaborate. We want to be able to centralize our assets. So now we have one copy of source material that everyone can work off of, so we know what's up to date. This is inherently obviously more collaborative than the local storage. It's much easier to scale because we have a central place. And now we have, and this, you can identify shared storage usually by all sorts of network protocols. Is it a NAS? Is it a SAN, SMB, AFP, SFTP, all those fun 3- and 4-letter acronyms that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so really the difference here between local storage and shared storage is very much like the refrigerator in your house, right? It doesn't really make sense for everyone in the family to have their own refrigerator and their own jar of mustard or Vegemite, as the case may be. It's much easier to just put it all in the one fridge and let's go in and out of it. But then that presents its own kind of unique challenges, some of which are specific to Adobe and the limitations of local file systems, because we only work on our workstation. So Adobe is designed to work on a single workstation, but it doesn't know that it's on a network, which creates problems when we start putting it on shared storage, because what could happen is multiple editors could open the same project file and they could begin overwriting each other's work. There's only one file name to save back to, and Adobe doesn't know if the file's open on edit A and edit B. It just knows it opened the file. So 2 people can open it. They can both try to save. One of them will get to. We find out tomorrow. And then one of Adobe's biggest strengths can also be a massive weakness and frustration for our workflows. Most post-production houses tend to be project-based, right? If we have a show, that's great, it's episodic TV, but we still have other projects coming in and out. And because Adobe is so great with all these different native codecs, from R3D to ARRI RAW, Canon RAW, ProRes, our old familiar suspects, ProRes, DNX HD, all of those guys, they vary widely in what they demand from shared storage, all of these different codecs. We're not necessarily looking to have, if we started off with a server that we were looking at ProRes HQ or something was our normal workflow, and then all of a sudden we get a project and the guy says, well, I've got a Red Dragon and we're going to edit natively in 6K, we better have a solution that's scalable enough and flexible enough to be able to account for the daily changes in our workflow or the project-based changes that could happen in our workflow. And we're going to show you kind of how we handle that here in a live demo in just a second. So specifically to address a lot of these problems, we've taken a tact with our EVO Shared Storage Server of being very open, very flexible, optimizing standard network protocols, not using anything like proprietary file systems or anything like that, to assure that we can adapt quickly to the ever-changing needs of our industry. We have optimized NAS protocols that are 3 to 4 times faster than a standard off-the-shelf NAS. We have block-level SAN access for heavy DPX work and VFX. And first and foremost, we do exactly what you expect from shared storage. Everyone can edit live off of the server, right? But then we go a step farther, and this is where most companies who are newer into the game kind of get left behind. They're all worried about speed and making sure that we can get enough streams. Well, we've been doing this for 17 years. We wouldn't have been around long enough if we weren't fast enough. So we took it to a whole new level and we said, you know what? How can we really improve the editor's workflow? Again, some of these challenges are unique to Adobe. Some of them are file system limitations. But how can we just make the experience better so that we spend more time in our NLE and less time in the Mac Finder or the Windows Explorer trying to get across? So first, we made it scalable. You can grow an EVO system to an extremely large size, to 500 terabytes in a single node, and then you can stack them next to each other. So that as you scale up, as you add disks to a system, we get faster. So if you have that project and you've been working in ProRes HQ and all of a sudden that 6K project comes in, you can get more disks, you can leave the data in place, and you can just grow the file system across the new drives. EVO is fully compatible with Adobe Anywhere, as Adobe does some really cool stuff now for remote editorial and live encoding. EVO can be the back end for that and provide an enhanced workflow in the local environment as well. And so some of the tools we're going to look at here, like our project locking, we developed a completely unique workflow for the Adobe Creative Suite with some advanced file locking, so we don't have to worry about this overwrite. And then we're also going to deal with some of just the general problems of shared storage. And so with that, what I'd like to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump into my live demo here. I'll watch this thing go away. And we should have two workstations running, right? I've got one on the left, one on the right. We're going to minimize Premiere. We know what that looks like. And we'll dive into that a little bit more here in just a second. And so here we have our ShareBrowser. I think it's important to take a second here and just juxtapose against what you would kind of expect from a normal NAS or SAN shared storage system to what we've done with this software that comes in unlimited fashion with our hardware. So the EVO is the hardware. It's what's providing the speed. It's the engine. It's the horsepower. And then the ShareBrowser is our interaction. This is the driver's seat, right? This is where we get to interact and see all of our panels and gauges and things like that. So we're going to go ahead and minimize here. In a normal environment, we see our desktop. And this is obviously a Mac environment. Everything you see here, guys, just so you know, if you are Windows users, our client comes on Windows as well and has all of the same functionality. So for anyone working on PC, anytime you hear me say Finder, just assume Explorer, and the terms are interchangeable from SNS's perspective because, again, we take that open architecture and that open approach. So with most systems, what I would do if I wanted to hit my shared storage, if I'm going to hit it and it's a NAS, for instance, I'm going to do a connect to server. And then I'm going to punch in an IP address, and it's going to ask me for my credentials, and I'm going to put in my username, I'm going to put in my password, and I'm going to have gone through all of those steps only to have the drive show up on my desktop. And then if I want to deal with that drive, I open a Finder window. And if it's a SAN, I have some kind of SAN mount utility. It's a whole separate software like SANMP over here that I can open, and it gives me a list of drives, and I tell it to mount the drive. And so I've opened the software, I go through all those processes, and it puts it on my desktop like a drive. If I have a direct attached drive to ingest from, or I'm doing something on my local drive, I open yet another Finder window. And then when I go to copy across, I have to find the files I want. Maybe it's in this folder. I want to drag it over. But I have to drag and drop, and I have all these Finder windows to kind of manage, so my desktop gets pretty cluttered pretty quickly. And I haven't even touched my production application yet. So we wanted to get rid of all this. We wanted to say, hey, look, what if we could give the editor just a single window, a single pane of glass to do everything that they need to do with the file system, to interact with their files, to quickly find files and things like that, without having to deal with the limitations of the native OS on shared storage. Because while the Finder is great, the Windows Explorer is great, again, they're just not designed for collaboration. So we wind up with all of these volumes, we wind up with all this stuff. And with that, we introduced our ShareBrowser system. And so we tried to make it look very Finder-like or Explorer-like, depending on the view you like. We used the columns view. That was our favorite. And what it allows me to do here is all of the volumes I have access to as an editor, and these can be permissioned off to anybody, appear in the left-hand column. So you can see the same things on my desktop now are here in the left-hand column. But instead of having to open a Finder window to copy across or to deal with stuff, I just select the volume. I can then mount it from here. The ShareBrowser remembers my credentials, so no more logging in multiple times. I log into the ShareBrowser, and then I get a list of everything that I need. And what's really cool here, and again, really, really unique to the EVO, is we can present third-party storage in here. So if you have legacy storage, you started off with those direct attached drives, we don't want you to throw them out. They cost money. They're still working. So maybe we repurpose them into a nearline form, and they can present themselves right here as shares in the left-hand side. Going beyond that, so now we've got a central user interface to deal with all the shares, but how do we know what's on them? That's kind of a pain. So with the EVO, we made it so the EVO can index and search not only itself, but any storage that touches the network anywhere. So I could plug a drive into the EVO. I could have it indexed, and I could make it searchable. I could plug a drive into a workstation and have the same process happen. I can even physically, after it's been indexed, remove that drive from the network completely and then still search what's on it. So in fact, let's go ahead and do that. We've got this FPZ file here on the Adobe. I'm going to unmount the Adobe volume. I'm going to quit Premiere first so I don't get an error message that tells me it's in use. And then we're just going to unmount. We're going to see the green light go away. And now let's search for FPZ. And I can still find it. It's on the Adobe volume. The Adobe volume isn't mounted. Let's go ahead and look at all the volumes I have access to, not just what's active. So even though the Adobe volume isn't actually connected to my network, and this could just as easily be on a shelf, everybody doesn't have to be even physically connected, I can find the file. And so great, now that I've found the file, I'd like to navigate to it, but the drive isn't mounted. And I'd like to get the preview, but because the drive isn't mounted, this file, the system doesn't know to show it to me. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to mount the volume directly from here with just one click. That's going to take me in, and then I can see my file. And I can get a full res preview of it right here. The EVO can actually generate proxy material as well, so that we're not pulling a full stream of video in the preview window. We're only pulling the proxy. So this is great. I can now search by file name. I can find things like when was the file created, last date in use. I can basically harvest system metadata, anything you would see in the Get Info pane on the Mac or in the Properties pane on the Windows on the PCs is harvested and in this little box down here in the lower right. But as we know when we come from cameras aren't necessarily great at giving me file names that I know how to search or that I know what's on it. So maybe we want to add some specific descriptors, some keywords, some comments, something like that. That's what this field is here. So as I look over, I have a keyword search field. This was actually a project done for the Museum of Flight here in Seattle. A NASA shuttle trainer got moved from Florida, or actually from Texas, from the Johnson Space Center up to Seattle in this kind of nifty giant plane called the Super Guppy. And we can see that. But let's go ahead and apply those tags. I need the footage. We can see it was the shuttle trainer. I need the footage with the Super Guppy. In fact, let's make it 2 words. Super Guppy. I just hit comma. That turns it into a keyword. I hit save. That's immediately updated in my database. And now I can search for Super Guppy and immediately find my file. Now, what's really cool here, too, is we go a step deeper to help you cross-reference what you're doing. We have this key column. And the key column is actually telling me where the metadata was found. So in this case, it was in a tag. And then giving me the value of the metadata field. So I can quickly find, oh, Super Guppy and NASA and Museum of Flight. This is clearly the one I want. And now, because the volume's already mounted, I'm just going to say Reveal in File List, and I'm going to go there in one click. I can then drag this source material right into Premiere to start a new project, or we can open a Premiere project. Down beneath, we have comments. So this is one of those general problems of shared storage and a little less Adobe specific, just the ability to find things. Because when you put in a shared storage system, one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to turn off Find on Windows, or you're going to turn off Spotlight. It wreaks havoc with the network. It tries to query the disk whenever it wants, creates a lot of unnecessary network chatter. So we have that. Now the other thing that we can do, so now we've got everything organized, we can find it, we've applied tags, that's great. I can even do this again from some other drive. I can start applying these tags when it's in my field drive as a volume in the left-hand column there. Now that it's there, maybe I want to ingest it. I've already applied some tags. And so what most people do, and what we're all used to doing, is we drag and drop a file from one share to the next. This is a terrible idea. And the reason being that the native OS, because it's not really designed for video files, doesn't inherently perform any data verification. And so what that means for us with shared storage is we can corrupt a file on copy and not realize it until we're 2 hours into an edit. This normally presents in the way it looks like weird sound pops in a video stream, or digital ghosting, or pixelation. So if you've ever had that happen to you, or for some reason once you ingest to your local drive, your direct attached drive, your existing shared storage system, whatever, but then when you go to play it back from there, it just looks 10, 12, 15 frames just aren't right. That's because not all the data made it. Basically, the native OSs, the Mac Finder, the Windows Explorer, just throw the data over and hope it doesn't check. So we wanted to solve that. So if I do a copy here, I can right-click. You'll notice we have a one-time bit-for-bit verification. Shift-Command-V would give me a paste and verify. So one of two things is going to happen. The file is going to paste, and I'm not going to get any error messages, and I know that it's intact, and I don't have to worry about it. Or I'm going to get an error, and I know to either watch the file to see what got messed up and make sure it's not something I needed, or alternatively, I can recopy the file and hope not to get the error message. Either way, I'm aware that something is wrong. I'm not 2 hours into an edit with a 30 minutes or 40 minutes left to my deadline, finding out I need to go re-ingest and hoping I have that source material somewhere. So it's a nice peace of mind kind of feature. So moving forward from here, we're going to start to talk a little bit more about the Adobe specific stuff, and then we're going to kind of come back to some generic, more generic SNS or shared storage kind of issues that we can solve and kind of help keep you safe. So first and foremost, the overwrite issue. Right? Again, Adobe is not network aware. So when I open this file, it doesn't know I opened it, which is not ideal, because then Demo 2 over here, or Demo 1, I guess, is over here, could open the same file, and no one would know. And if we both tried to save, one of us would, and again, we'd find out who tomorrow. So we tried to make this a little more intuitive and easy. When I open the file, you'll notice that green right lock appeared. And we're going to go ahead and let the project load up here. So there's a couple of other things I'm going to show you once we get into the Adobe interface itself. All right, so now we're going to come in here. I've entered my project file. I have that green right lock. Great. I'm the right user. I'm protected. I can also see that the Demo 1 system has this project file open and is already in process of working on it. And if we pop over to the other workstation here for just a second, we'll see the inverse. Demo 2 is working on this. I'm the active user of this file. All right, we can open up here. So what happens if I try to open a locked file? I can. I can get this in read-only mode. So if I were to say yes, my lock would turn red. And now I'm in the file, but I have read-only access. And if we come back into Premiere, and actually let's actually mount the volume that has the source material on it so we stop getting silly error messages. Give me 1 second. Let's go ahead back to the Adobe volume real quick. And we're just going to open this guy up again. What did I mount the wrong volume? Oh, I know why it's going there. We're going to do it with a different project. There we go. And so real quickly as we do this, back, we'll see that other lock up here. There it is. And now we're going to open that file. Yes, I'd like to open it with read permission. And so here we go. So now, when I try to save, I get this error message. It says, no, you need to do a save as, otherwise you're going to overwrite Demo 1's work, and they're not going to be very happy come tomorrow. So we're going to say OK, and we're just going to go do a file save as and version this off. So now we're going to make it, instead of version 2, let's actually make it version 4, because I think I already have a version 3. And now we'll see that come up here. Oh, there's my version 3. And we can see that this was an intro-outro. So there's a couple of reasons you might want to go into the same timeline, right? Maybe I want to do an alternative cut for producer review, or I want to do an intro-outro to that sequence. I can do that, and then I can comment on it So this is the intro outro, and then we can also use the comments field for task management, as we said earlier. So I can say this is ready for approval. So now if I'm the producer or the post supervisor, who's ever responsible for sign off, I can come in and I can do ready for approval. And here's my task list for the day. Great. Steve finished up that intro outro. I can take a look at it. Or Tim finished up that intro outro. I open it up in Premiere. I watch the file, see what it looks like, and then I can just change it to approved, and we'll just assign it back to Tim for final render. So now Tim, toward the end of the day, can take a look at his name, do a search, and go, oh, fantastic, that got approved. I should render this out, and we'll get it ready for delivery. Right? So we have a couple of different ways to communicate here. Now, the only time our little locking mechanism, which you'll notice looks a lot like project and bin sharing from Avid, gives you the same kind of visualization and protection. It's just not quite as automated because it's not coded into the Adobe software the way it is into Media Composer. The only time this would become an issue is if someone got into my file before me. Maybe the producer came in early, they're reviewing my work, and they got the right lock. Well, I could go knock on their door. I don't know that I particularly want to do that while they're reviewing my work. So maybe I just send them a message. Go ahead and right-click. We're going to request an unlock. And then if we come back over to the Demo 1 system here, we'll get a pop-up message that says, hey, Demo 2 wants your file, yes or no. If I say yes, which we'll do on this one, come back over here, the lock drops. I can now open the file with write permission. If we come back over here, I'm going to ask, we're going to do the opposite now. I'm going to ask for an unlock. We're going to come over. Demo 1 wants my file. No, I don't like that guy. We're going to hit no. And then he's going to pop up back, not right now, I'm busy. And we're going to have to find some other way to fight about write permission at that point. So at that point, we'll have to get out of our chairs. For the most part, we've been able to get pretty far without it. So the next thing with this asset management is maybe we want these tags and these comments to actually live inside of Premiere as well. Because again, the whole idea really of the ShareBrowser is to give you a central interface, but also to keep you in your edit application as much as humanly possible, because that's kind of where we want to be, right? So what I can do here, I see I've got my tags, I've got my comments. I want to put them in Premiere. So let's go ahead and do an export. I'm going to export this as FCP7 XML, and we'll call this Arial 1. I'm going to go ahead and stick it on the shared volume here. We'll stick it under exports and save. And so now when I come back into my Premiere project, and I can import that sequence. Nope, just gotta find it. Hold on. How did I put it there? I don't think it saves. Let's find that again. Let's put it in the root and make it easy. There we go. That should be immediately updated. Let's just make sure it's there. Why are you not coming there? Shrink this file tree down so we can see the root a little bit, I guess. Yeah, there's Arial. That'll work. All right, so now we're going to bring this media in real quick. Arial, import, and we're going to watch this come right in, and there we go. The tags field goes to the description field right here, and the comments field goes to the log notes. So now even from inside of the NLE, or inside of Premiere, I know that this file is ready for approval, and I can search and find all of that stuff and manage my media natively within the Creative Suite. Because it's important to note here as well that our locking mechanism is done by file extension. You can see that in the admin UI. So we're going to come into Web Portal real quick. We're going to go to Network and Project Sharing here, and I'm just going to go ahead and select the Adobe volume to edit. There's a couple of cool things we can do from here as we talk about flexibility, but I wanted to show you specifically that this locking mechanism works across the entire CC suite. So we're telling this share right now to lock. There's Premiere file extension right there, PRPROJ. There's After Effects. We've got InDesign files locked, Photoshop documents. This way we're protected no matter what piece of the Adobe suite we're working in. The locks also do work with dynamic link. So if you go open your After Effects project and you round trip, the After Effects project will lock within the ShareBrowser as well. So you don't have to worry about that. Now the other thing we can do from this screen, which is pretty cool, is we can dynamically resize any of our workspaces to fit our needs within the purview of free space. So right now the Adobe volume is 50 gigs and it's out of space. Well, I have more footage I need to bring in. So let's make it, I don't know, let's make it 500 gigs. And we'll hit save. And then when we come back to the ShareBrowser, as it syncs up, we're going to watch the Adobe volume grow. I can just as easily shrink this. With many systems out there, many RAID systems, what you have to do is actually take all of the data off of the RAID, which means you have to have a whole other RAID just as big. And then you have to rebuild the RAID, resize the volume, put all the data back on, which is an incredibly painful process if you've ever had to do it. With the EVO, we can just up or down on the fly, however you want. And then we'll see the same thing over here. As it syncs back, the Adobe volume is going to grow. So the next thing we really get concerned about when we get into shared storage, same thing kind of with the overwrite from Adobe, and this is just as true of Adobe because Adobe creates so many project files, so many autosave files, and so much source material and media cache files, is what happens if somebody deletes something? At least when I delete something off of direct attached storage or off my local drive, it goes to my trash can or it goes to my recycle bin. So if I really made a mistake, I can go pull it back before I've emptied it. That's not true with network storage. If somebody hits delete from network storage, it's gone. And I hope you have a backup of it somewhere, or at least it was a really inexpensive shoot if you have to go reshoot. So that's why, usually with network storage, what happens is when I delete something, I get a warning. Don't do this. Are you sure? However, that doesn't stop an intern or newer editor not as well trained or whoever, or even the best of us from accidentally doing that. So in theory, we have a really big problem. But with EVO, we've created this network recycle bin right on that same network and project sharing pane in the admin utility. I can just scroll to the bottom. And you'll notice that my recycle bin isn't set to ever purge. Never use that setting. Set it for 2 or 3 weeks or something, whatever makes the most sense for data retention. You don't want to clog up the storage with trash files. But you can set it anywhere from 1 week, 1 day to 4 months. But then I can just browse at the file system level. I don't have to go snapshot back the system and lose everything else I did that day to restore my backup or anything like that. I just come in and I find the file that got deleted. So this is an MVI file. I paid more attention to which one I deleted. Anyway, I'll just bring this folder back. So this whole folder wasn't supposed to get deleted. We're going to come down to the bottom here, and we're just going to restore the selected file. And we'll see it reappear in the Adobe Share. So I call this super intern friendly mode or idiot resistant mode because nothing is idiot proof. Give an idiot a toy, they will break it. But now I have my whole folder back that was gone before, right back in place where it belongs. So that's there. So we've got you protected on that front as well. And the next thing we deal with is really delivering. We have to deliver these files, whether they be Premiere Project files attached to proxies or something like that, or whether they be full-on renders. We also want a way when we deliver, we got to figure out how we deliver first. So a lot more of our clients are utilizing cloud services, so we wanted to build in cloud services as well. any of these 5 cloud services, if you use any of them, I'm sure all of you use Adobe Creative Cloud, or you wouldn't be sitting here listening to me ramble on today. I can have the local sync folder for the Creative Cloud service, for Dropbox, for Hightail, whatever, show up here as a share. We can move files onto them. That'll sync them up to the cloud for delivery. But what happens if the client on the other end downloads it and it's not right? How do we prove to them that it didn't look like that when we uploaded it? Well, so we have the same data verification problem, right? But they don't have ShareBrowser, so they can't paste and verify. But we can generate and store an MD5 checksum. This is an industry standard way of doing data verification. I don't know if any of you guys are doing work for the Discovery channel here in the States. Discovery requires an MD5 checksum with all of its deliverables. So now I can just grab the source or the render and its associated MD5 and move it over to, I'm going to stick it on the edit one volume here, but we're going to pretend that's my cloud service. Yes, keep both, it's fine. And now once the MD5 is over there, I can take a look at it and I can verify it. And there are many, many softwares out there. Yay, it all made it, great. There are many, many softwares out there that do MD5 verification. They don't all generate the files, but there are softwares like Shotput Pro or Carbon Copy Cloner that your customers can use to check these files. Or if you get an angry call going, why do these 15 frames look terrible? You can say something like, it didn't look like that when I uploaded it. That's why we included the MD5. Please check that. And if it's not correct, re-download the file. Or if you need us to send it to you again, let us know. Either way, you're not having to defend yourself. you have that nice little CYA feature. Not my fault. Check the MD5. So that's there as well. EVO can also provide SFTP access, so field editors that if we can't all afford Adobe Anywhere quite yet, field editors can pull down material, maintain the paths, and work remotely on their local machine inside of Premiere, which is pretty cool. So it can simultaneously be your online server, your FTP server, and NAS, and you can carve it up kind of however you want. We have our search filters up here, so if you do want to search by only human-entered metadata or something like that, you can do that with the tags only selection here. And now we're only going to find things that have been tagged. Go across all volumes for Tim. And there's Tim, and he knows that that's approved as we did earlier. And these are easily updatable. One other thing we can do for ingest, which is kind of neat on the tagging front, is this recursive button right here. Maybe I want to tag the entire folder. So let's add, this is what, Posh Classic Boats. The preview file is the media cache. So, I don't know, Lake, Geneva, comma. I'm going to hit recursive. I'm going to hit save. And now every file in the folder has been tagged, Lake Geneva, and in all the subfolders. So if I want to quickly batch tag an entire day's shoot with specific descriptors, I can do that and then dial down and add more specific descriptors at the file level as well. And then just do my XML dump back into Premiere. And again, that's kind of the goal here, guys, is let's be in Premiere as much as possible or in After Effects. So it's kind of the 30,000-foot overview of some of the stuff we're doing. So just to review, we talked about with our ShareBrowser how you're going to be able to search, index, and manage all of your media, not just across EVO shares or across our server, but across any storage that touches the network in any place, whether it's network ready or not, whether it's a local drive, whether it's direct attached storage. We're going to be able to find it. So even if your editor commits the cardinal sin of editing in a shared environment, turns off their computer, goes home for the night after they rendered locally, you're going to be able to find that file and not have to wake them up at 2 a.m. You might want to wake them up at 2 a.m. anyway, but that's up to you. We found a safe way to share Creative Cloud projects across the entire Creative Suite. And then we can also quickly find by adding keywords, tags, using our data verification tools to protect the data, protect the assets, so that we don't wind up with weird file corruption. And we can preview files, both from whether they be full-res online files or proxies generated by the EVO. So I can even watch the files that are on a drive or on a tape that is not physically connected to my network before I go pull it and reconnect it to take a look. And we can do this all just from the ShareBrowser interface, which again comes for free in unlimited fashion when you purchase any of our servers. So we have a few different flavors of the server. This is important to note as well. And this is really important for those small, mid-size, even up to fairly large enterprise class deployments. We like to keep the network simple. One of the reasons we all switched to Adobe is because Final Cut X changed too much. It became complicated. It was too complicated. So we went from Final Cut 7 and Premiere filled the void. So taking that same tact, we want to keep the EVO and the network as simple as humanly possible. With that in mind, one of the ways to do that is to minimize the need for network switching or to have too many network hops. So our larger EVO there at the bottom can take up to 28 direct connect 1 gigabit Ethernet clients. So I can have 28 people directly connected to the server working in real time with 4K or 6K footage. Without any need for a network switch or an IT department to configure or maintain that switch for me. We can also put 10 gig Ethernet in. We can put in fiber channel. If you have legacy fiber channel, maybe you had XSANs floating around or something else, or you have older fiber channel storage. In fact, in that open architecture vein that we were discussing earlier, I can actually plug older fiber channel storage into an EVO fiber channel port and bridge it out to Ethernet so that now everyone who connects with a Cat6 cable or a Cat5e cable can actually see my fiber volumes. So we can really help you repurpose and extend the life and the return on investment of both your legacy storage as well as the new purchase. We also have pretty attractive price points, as we'll see here in just a second. So we start off with our little guy, the EVO Prodigy. This is really handy for people who do have existing shared storage and want to get some of our workflow. They want to be able to index that storage. They want to be able to search it. They don't just want to buy software. They want to get our project locking for Adobe. It's also really great for audio work. It's only about 15 inches deep. It can go to live production with you if you have to do cutting out on a live stage or anything like that. It actually fits in the carry-on on a plane. So a really nice fit, starts as low as 4,800 US, and you can add drives, and it kind of scales up from there. This guy can take 8 direct connect 1 gig ports and provide our workflow. And as Frank alluded to earlier, guys, this is also really cool if you're coming from an XSAN or you're coming from some other kind of more generic shared storage, and you get something like Avid Media Composer. A lot of our installs in Australia are actually with Media Composer because we can emulate the Avid file system, giving you native project and bin sharing without having to buy the Avid ISIS. We do this obviously at a fraction of the cost. You put your projects and bins on here. There is no ISIS that comes in anywhere close to $4,800. Now, as we move forward, US dollars. We have our 8-bay. This is a 2RU server. This is great for small to medium work groups. It can take up to 10 direct connect 1 gigs. It can take multi-port 10 gig or fiber channel. We have a lot of success with this one with corporate in-house departments. So at least in the U.S., more and more companies are insourcing their creative, which is not wonderful news because the poor guys that get sucked into the corporate wind up with the IT department of the corporation who doesn't understand what a video server needs to be. So often what we'll do is we'll put these things in, like Evernote has one of these, Specialized Bicycles has one of these, where the IT guys said, hey, well, we'll just carve you off a piece of our big IT SAN and you'll be fine. And they tried it and it didn't work. So this way the IT department doesn't have to get involved. EVO is its own island for the video edit team. One port goes out to that bigger centralized whatever IT SAN that they're using and backs the EVO up so that they still have redundancy and protection of their stuff. This is also great for houses of worship. And then we have partnerships for live event stuff with both the ROS expression system for on-screen graphics or the NewTek TriCaster. So if you wanted to go live to post in an instant, you can do that. With NewTek, I can capture all 8 camera feeds or 7 camera feeds on the program feed in real time. And what's really cool about Adobe is Adobe lets us do something called growing files. So I can, as I'm recording a live event, I can watch that file grow on my timeline, start cutting it in real time, and have it ready by the end of the show for delivery. I can do different cutaways, and I have access to all of the footage being shot across the entire event, which is really, really neat, right? So we can go live to post in an instant. And then we come up to the flagship here. This is our 16 bay. This is great for large environments. This is also great for bandwidth-heavy workflows. Think color grading, DPX workflows, TIFF sequences, VFX with After Effects, or anything that's a little deeper. Also, just larger environments. Think academic environments. Media labs that have 60, 80, 100, 200 seats. And then also really good for broadcast and sports. Fox Sports uses this here in the States, connected to a large EVS SAN, actually, for live broadcast. It live captures all the program feed coming in, and we do all the commercial cutaways for things like the U.S. Super Bowl, NASCAR, which I know outside of this country is everyone turning in a big left circle, and all sorts of other stuff. So golf. So that's kind of the total lineup there. We also have our holiday specials running here in the fourth quarter. So for you guys down in Australia, imagine that's not snow out the window, right? It's a nice sunny day. And we're running some really cool promotions. This one specifically is great for you Avid users out there that are smaller, or even the Adobe users, especially the Adobe users out there, because Avid has released its ISIS 1000, and they've targeted you guys as the Adobe crowd, and they've said we're compatible with Adobe, and our ISIS 1000 is now affordable. It's $17,995 US, and you guys can get it, and it's going to be great, and it's going to provide you 36 streams of 50 megabit per second video, and by the way, it's 16 terabytes. So what we decided to do was say, okay, well, Avid being Avid. And we have a 48 terabyte EVO. It's an 8-disc system. We made it the same price as the ISIS 1000. It provides 60 streams of 50 megabit a second video. It has 3 times the storage capacity. It has dual port 10 gig. It can also take an additional 4 ports of 1 gig. So we can direct connect up everybody, and most importantly, has our project locking. Because when you talk about the ISIS in an Adobe environment, it's an absolutely terrible idea. The reason you pay a premium for Avid branded storage is because of the unique workflow it unlocks, the same workflow that we unlock with Avid Media Composer. When you buy ISIS for Premiere or for After Effects, you've just bought the world's most expensive dumb NAS. There's no enhancement. There's no increased functionality. You might as well have gone to the local shop and built your own RAID, because that's all it is. It's a wide open permission system. It's not even that quick when it's not dealing with DNX media. We also have our competitive upgrade package. So for those of you out there who do have somebody else's, the other guy's storage, maybe you're happy with it, maybe you're not. I promise you our workflow is going to be much cleaner. It's going to be much easier for your editors to wrap their head around, and we'll give you up to $4,000 to take it off your hands. That said, in the States here, I would have everyone kind of ship the stuff back to me and we recycle it. You should absolutely recycle your electronics. But for the trade-in, if you'd like to, just to have some fun, if your server's really making you mad, we'd love to see you take a video of you smashing it, going all Office Space on it, if you guys know that movie, and we'll consider that the trade-in for the 4K. And then please do recycle the parts. So you can save 15% on a new 8-bay system, up to 20% on one of our on an expansion chassis for any of those existing EVO customers that might be on this call. If you have any questions about what you've seen here today, if you want a more personalized demo for your environment, you want Tim to hop on the phone and kind of work with you too, Frank, feel free to call Adimex to find out about any of the numerous resellers that carry EVO in the Australia-New Zealand territory. Feel free to reach out to us as well. Shoot us an email at studionetworksolutions.com. You can actually hit T Ward
T-Ward,
T-W-A-R-D. Yep, there it is. T-Ward at studionetworksolutions.com. And that'll get you straight to Tim. He can get you hooked up with Frank, and we can go from there. So at this point,
and I did want to,
we can open it up for questions.
I can interrupt you for a second, Steve. I want to point out
go ahead,
all
Tim.
those prices are U.S. dollars. So to get your price in Australian dollars, please contact your local reseller.
And it looks like we do have some questions here on the left. So first and foremost, we have, will it index NAS shares as well? Absolutely. It'll index not just our NAS shares, but any NAS on your network. So if you have an Office server NAS or something that you wanted to index and start tagging files or something like that, you could absolutely do that. So the next question we have here comes from Nick. When setting up a new project, does EVO generate a custom file structure for you? No, Adobe does that. Adobe actually sets up its own kind of file folder structure. And again, we like to give you the flexibility because a lot of what we found in our industry after doing this for so long and for so many years is while we're all doing the same thing, we're all exporting video at the end of the day, we're all doing it in a different way. Some people have different organizational structures. Some people are more project-based. Some people are more broadcasty. It just depends. Our next question comes from Robert, asking about backups. So EVO is by its nature RAID protected. Drives can fail depending upon the RAID level you've got. You could have 1, 2, up to half the drives fail and not lose any data. As far as backups go, if you've got a secondary server, like a nearline or something you want to back up to, what we often find our customers doing, because EVO is an online server, it's not really designed, it's designed solely for speed and to be a fairly transitory piece because it's online. So usually once a project is finished, it goes off to LTO tape or to archive. We do integrate with the Zen Data archive system, so we can actually generate proxy, we can search the tapes and things like that. If you want to do an automated backup, a lot of people will use, because we use standard network protocols that are optimized for video, any standard network backup utility is going to work. So a lot of people in the Mac world use ChronoSync for us. I have customers using like Semantic Backup Exec running on a workstation that sees the EVO volume and sees whatever the location is that we're backing up to, and then just does what's called an rsync, which is basically all the changes that occurred in a day off to something else. So find the best backup solution for you, and we're most likely going to support it. I believe next one comes from John here, asking if we're recording the webinar and if you guys will be able to get access to it later. Yes, we are. I think we're going to send this off to Adimex, and they're going to make it available to you.
We'll send out a note to all registered attendees.
So I got a two-part question now from Brisbane. Does ShareBrowser give you notice if a drive goes down in the RAID? Absolutely. It'll give you many, many notices, in fact. We have SNMP monitoring, so you'll get a note on the system. You'll also get an email, and there will be a very, very loud audible alarm that goes off. All the drives are hot swappable. So if a drive does fail, you just pop it out, pop in a new one, let the RAID rebuild, go about your life, go about your day. And then it also looks like we have a second part of that question is how many drives can go down in a RAID 5 plus 6? So are we asking 5 or 6 or RAID 56? Which is not something I see very often, RAID 50. 5 or 6, there we go. Awesome. So in a RAID 5, a single disk can fail in a pool before any data is lost. If the second disk fails, that's when we have something bad happen. In a RAID 6 configuration, we have double disk parity, dual drive failure. So 2 disks can go down. And what's cool here too, guys, is that flexibility of the EVO I was talking about is we don't have to just necessarily, if we have a 16-bay EVO, not all 16 disks necessarily need to be in the same pool. We really let you kind of customize it, and we have a workflow consultation service called our custom config, where our specialists will actually sit down with you and kind of define your workflow and talk about how we want to pool these. So we could have two 8-disk RAID 5s, and what's really cool about that is if one disk goes down in pool A, the first 8 disks, and we pop it in and we start rebuilding the SAN, pool B is completely unaffected. Everyone's still working real time, happy as a clam. They have no idea anything happened to pool A. So that way we can kind of segregate and maintain some more, uptime and stability. Because when you do rebuild a RAID, it's degraded. It's a bit slower while it rebuilds. So maybe we want to be able to keep working. Or we can do a 12-disk RAID 6 or a 16-disk RAID 6. We can even do a 2-disk RAID 0, maybe for a high-speed transfer space after like a DaVinci or something. So we give you, again, a lot of flexibility there. Do you provide any, next question we have here from Sydney, do you provide any functionality for project sharing, not only locking, but two editors working on the same project at the same time? So what we've done is we've provided the ability, again, similar to Avid Project and bin sharing with the visualization and the lock, but quite frankly, you don't really want, like, simple answer, no. But the practicality of that workflow, we were kicking around that idea and we were really thinking about it, and then we kind of envisioned the situation with two editors both having their mice on the same timeline and decided that that might be really, really confusing for everybody. So went away from that side of it. But you are sharing projects. The project is in the same, we can both read and write to the same volume. We can both get to that project file, and now we're doing it in a protected fashion, so we're not kind of messing anything up. Otherwise, unfortunately, files, unlike golf balls, don't have the names written on them, and if everyone just hit their golf ball at the green at the same time, we'd all be lost. So, kind of the same thing there. But something Adobe is kind of working on, and something we are certainly compatible with, within the Anywhere solution. I know their Anywhere, some of their Anywhere stuff is trying to get that more Avid project and bin sharing workflow going, which is cool. All right, we got another one here from Sydney. If I understood correctly, you indexed a USB drive, which was subsequently removed. While it's removed, how much metadata is available? Then what process says reattach that drive? So, all of the metadata that lives in our database, the file name, the date created, last date used, codec in use, any of the tags you've applied. In fact, you can even tag the file while the drive isn't connected and be able to. So basically all of the metadata you saw us using is fully available whether the drive's attached or not. What process says reattach that drive? That's the mount. When I right-clicked and I went down to the mount drive, obviously, if it's physically disconnected, we have to go physically connected or get a robot, which Star Wars has a cool new one. So where it needs to be reconnected is anywhere on the network. Plug it into any workstation, the EVO will find it and remap it. Yep. What protects against two USB drives having the same name credentials? Unfortunately, that's something we have to leave to people. Please don't do that. Otherwise, you're going to see two entries and it's going to look kind of wonky. Yeah, unfortunately, the EVO isn't controlling the other storage. It's just giving you a nice central portal to deal with all of it. So if it's something you know and you know you're using the ShareBrowser, just don't name the same USB drive or two USB drives are the same thing. I actually had someone do that with two volumes on an EVO once. It was one of the most frustrating support tickets I've ever had to deal with. Do you provide stream counts for specific EVO systems is the next question we have here. And do you support Thunderbolt storage connection to the EVO server? So, stream counts, we provide them in 8-disk hunks on our website. So typically our deployments, we found the kind of the best sweet spot, as a rule of thumb between performance and parity is 8-disk RAID 5s. So in a 16-bay, we do two 8-disk pools. 8-bay, obviously, one 8-disk pool. And then our little Prodigy has 4 disks. And then we scale linearly if you kind of keep that architecture. So we put the 8-disk pool number up. We find it to be the most common. calculate out the aggregate throughput of the EVO. Just on a 16 bay, you double it. The expansion chassis doubles the 16 bay yet again. And then there's a second, third, and fourth expansion chassis. Just keep adding linearly to get a rough idea. And certainly reach out to your local reseller, and they can provide you with more detailed information on that. Thunderbolt connectivity directly to the EVO. We don't, and here's why. Thunderbolt is not a network protocol. We're starting to see some sharing over Thunderbolt. It's something we're looking at. However, Thunderbolt is a replacement for the PCI bus. Thunderbolt is Apple's way of making me pay for my own PCI slots instead of putting them in the motherboard to fit their form factor. I lament that, and I still buy a bunch of Apple stuff, so it's whatever. But it was never really designed for networking. You still see 10 gig E, 40 gig E around the corner will be faster than Thunderbolt. Fiber channel for super low latency, but Thunderbolt itself, not really a network protocol. Guys, do we have any other questions coming in? You have 30 more seconds. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I think that probably means it's a wrap there. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Tim, and thank you to our attendees. We did see some reports of some problems with the audio, so